Why is that so important that they find the answer and you're not giving it to them?
Because for a lot of people, if I don't take ownership of it, if I'm not really owning it, then it becomes this thing that the consultant told me to do. And now I'm not as thrilled about it, and I don't really own it because I didn't come up with the structure. And the other thing is we're all different, right? Like how you and I work is going to be different.
Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Devo, Chief Experience Officer for the Brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Branding Laboratory. I'm Devo, and on this podcast, we're going to explore the intersection of identity and leadership and legacy with some of the most interesting founders and creatives and entrepreneurs that I scour the world to find using social media. No, it's literally people that just are now finding the show on their own, and people that I look for that really resonate with me, whether it's their messaging, whether it's their brand story, et cetera. And I invite them to be a guest on the show. I'm your host, Devo, as I said at the outset, and I'm a brand strategist. I am a creative storyteller and an identity architect. That's a mouthful. And today we're getting into something that every leader hits eventually: the gap between success on paper and alignment in real life, and not just the version that you share on social media. And my guest today is Brandon Allen. He is a seasoned coach, a business coach. He is a strategist, and he is the founder of the New Work Revolution. And he's spent the last 15 years helping founders and executives and high growth teams lead with clarity and build with intention and scale without losing themselves in the process. And he's coached everyone from New York Times best-selling authors, whom he's actually guided into writing those books, to leaders inside Inc. 500 companies. He is the voice behind the Growth and the Freedom podcast, and he is a contributing member of the Forbes Coaches Council. So he's kind of a big deal. And his work blends strategy, which is what I do, with self-awareness, which is what I'm trying to do, and challenging leaders to stop defaulting to hustle and start choosing conscious execution. So we're going to explore the real challenge centered around all the things that he does, which is, are you running your business or is the business running you? So I'm going to go ahead and bring him into the show, and I can't wait to break down this conversation. And welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Man, this has been a whirlwind journey, and I was reading over your bio last night and just trying to kind of better understand how I could position the show so that you could show up in your best light. And one of the things that I want to do on today's episode is kind of center around a problem that we're going to solve sort of accidentally through your answers, if you will, rather than just
Okay.
kind of taking head on. And the
Yeah.
answer that I think I'm seeking today is, are you running your business or is the business running you? And the reason I went into that direction is, this is what you help people with, right? But I did a post a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn and got a lot of feedback from people on it, but it was sort of centered around this concept and how a lot of people think that working more hours, spending more time, taking work home with them, that you're working because you're working harder, you're working smarter. And it's literally the opposite of that. And so I guess I want to dive into that. And kind of like the first space I really want to jump into before we get into all that is your origin story. Again, let's just go back to the beginning. What's your backstory and where did this journey really start for you from what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. So I got a degree in economics and decided to work in finance and banking to start my career. And
Same.
so the interesting thing about that is about 2 months into my career in finance, I knew it was the wrong career for me, but I stayed for 10 years just to make sure.
Mm.
And what I realized in that journey and what came up for me in management was coaching.
Mm.
I went to a coaching course. I took kind of a weekend, like a 4 day extended weekend crash course in coaching and management and how to use coaching to manage people well. And at the time, I had been doing less than stellar at managing people and had not been doing a great job. And so I took this course and I loved it. And it opened my eyes to not only my own limitations and blind spots as a leader and as a communicator and really as a human being. It also helped me to transform the team that I worked with in terms of their performance and how they did. And while I didn't love finance, that kind of started kind of opened the door for me to doing something else. So I left my finance career. I worked for a privately held company. So that was weird going from corporate to privately held, less structure, a lot of, hey, do what you think is right type of things as a COO. And, we made the Inc. 500 and we did some things that way. But in 2008, because the firm was a financial services firm as well, there was a lot of heavy investments in real estate and properties and things like that. And so that company really, for all intents and purposes, folded.
Mm.
And I found myself really, for the first time in my adult life, without a job that was not my choosing. So I remember I thought about it for a while in my office and I went home and I talked to my wife and I said, hey, I really think there's some things that I can do to help other leaders reduce their stress around people and organization. And I think I want to start doing that as a vocation. And I'm like, what do you think about me just trying to make a go of that as a consultant and doing some consulting work? So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
So, would you say that the defining moment for this new trajectory was getting laid off, having some ambiguity around your future, and in sort of in that midst of the darkness that you had this epiphany?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's and there's a thing about running a business. I really wanted to for a long time. I mean, as a kid, I thought about running my own business. In fact, I worked in the restaurant business for a long time when I was younger, and I actually really loved that environment, the fast pace, the just the way that you have to really structure and organize everything that happens so that people have a great experience.
Hmm.
I actually really loved it. And I decided not to do the restaurant business, but I'd always wanted to do something entrepreneurial.
It's interesting. I have some similar parallels to your career. I started off straight out of college and went into the corporate workforce. Same thing. I worked for a Fortune 50 company in banking. Mine centered around project management, exclusively marketing, branding, and just sort of operational stuff. And I remember having this thought. I had been working in New York City, wearing a suit and tie every day. And I remember thinking about 2 weeks in, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? Like, I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around the impact I'm making here. But like anything I do, I just sort of dove head in and became a student of the game. And I ended up doing that for 15 years. And and I guess for 15 years, while I trudged along and made an impact in my because I became an officer of the company pretty early on, those sort of things, I just always remember thinking at the end of the day, what the hell am I even doing? Right? Like I had basically I almost felt like I had sold my soul, but I didn't have the self-awareness to sort of look at it and say, hey, maybe I could do something else because I didn't have anyone. I'd never had conversations as a younger individual. My father never shared anything with me like, become an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Um, do you think that do you think when you look back at your, not just the trajectory of your professional life, but even as a child, were there moments where you were sort of like, this is what I want to do when I grow up, and they didn't center around working for a bank in a corporate capacity?
It's confusing because I think I had a lot of mixed feelings about things. When I was a kid, some of my favorite movies, and I'm going to date myself by bringing these up, 80s movies like The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox.
Mm.
I love that movie. Kevin Bacon was in a show called oh man, I think it's called I can't remember the name of it. He's a bike courier, and he's a failed stock trader, trading places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, like all these movies that I watched around, and I really thought maybe I wanted that kind of a lifestyle, but I also wanted to be free. I had challenges with authority, and I didn't want to be beholden to someone telling me what to do. So I think ultimately the idea of entrepreneurship always appealed to me, but I really thought I wanted to work in money and banking and finance and do that at a certain level, because I think a lot of that I romanticized it and thought that's what I wanted to do. But in reality, I the idea of sitting at a cubicle in front of a computer on the phone all day really just it killed my spirit. I felt like a caged animal.
I'm surprised you never got into radio. You have a nice radio voice. Has anyone ever told
Yeah,
you that?
I did. You know what? I remember a girl in high school told me that.
That
And then
doesn't
I
that
actually
doesn't
did
count.
radio. I did radio. I had a radio show here in Salt Lake for a minute on an AM station. So
That's awesome. And
yeah,
you also do podcasting now, so that carries
yeah,
over. It's interesting, challenges with authority. I actually thought early on in my career that I had some friends who joined the military, and I just remember thinking, there's no way in hell I will survive 1 week taking orders from people in that capacity. It's just no
sure,
way. So
yeah,
very similar to you. And but we did the corporate route where we worked for other people and we were taking orders and that sort of thing. And that's kind of funny you said that, because one of the reasons I ultimately walked away was I was getting the creativity sapped out of me.
yeah,
And I remember that there, and this is somewhat vain sounding. I remember that there were people that were sapping the creativity out of me that, in my opinion, were completely incompetent at what they were doing, but they had been with the company for like 25 years, and so they had sort of
yeah,
worked their way. And I was like, if this is how it's going to be the rest of my trajectory, I don't know how long I could survive in this. So,
yeah,
but where I'm going with this is a lot of the founders that I speak to, entrepreneurs that I speak to, which is mostly the crux of the show, they sort of share a similar sentiment. They don't really like taking orders from people. And I always wonder, like, is that a bit of narcissism in us, or is there something else to that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, like for me, I'll tell you, going back even further, I never met my dad. My
Oh, well.
mom was a drinker.
Mm,
And I think for me, authority figures were people that were not to be trusted.
mm,
And so I think, unfortunately for me, I think some of that comes from an unhealthy place. And I've
mm,
had to work through how to look at authority differently. Now that I'm a father, I have employees, I've been in management, I have to look at that I've had to look at that differently than my own experience. So I think for me personally, I had a bad experience with authority when I was younger. And when you grow up in a situation you're um where you're different, right? It's like, hey, I didn't dress well, my clothes were shabby, we didn't have a lot of money, then people start treating you a certain way. And that's principals, teachers, you name it. Now, not everyone that was in an authority place treated me that way, but enough of them did where I thought, man, you just can't trust people that are in authority. They're not for you. And
mm.
that's kind of what I carried into my adult life.
There's a lot of self-awareness in that response. The fact that you didn't fall into that trap, that soulless trap of not having any mentors, not having a father figure, not having a mother that really was fully present, if you will. I mean, I'm just sort of jumping to conclusions based on what you said.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm sharing very similar background with my own family as well. But it's interesting that you didn't fall into the trap of poverty or even worse, a criminal activity. What do you think was, if you look back at your childhood and the trajectory that you've taken, was there something specific that you remember learning or seeing or reading that sort of was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to allow this to define who I am?
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so much I could say in this. I will say that I did dabble in crime a little bit.
Touche.
Right? So,
Let's hear about that.
um, and I hung out with kids that, look, when you grow up in a single parent household, where, at a time where my mom started to get her life back together, well, she was working nights
Mm,
because she was a nurse. And so that left me with not a lot of supervision at
mm.
night. And so what kids like me did is we ran the streets with other kids. And so, here I am, 10, 11, 12, you name it, and I'm out running the streets. And at some point, you know, after doing, petty things, nothing major.
Like what?
Um,
Give me an example.
I mean, stealing, shoplifting, vandalism. I mean, there was a car that was a little more major, but that was that was someone else's idea. There were just some things like that. But what came clear to me is around middle school, I kind of looked at some of the people I hung around with, and I thought, do I really want this life?
Mm,
Is this the life that I want? Is this
mm,
the things that I want to do? Or should I do something different with my talents and abilities? And I knew I was a smart kid. I knew that I was capable. I mean, I got good grades, and teachers would get frustrated with me because they're like, this kid gets good grades, but he's an asshole. And so we don't know what to do with that. It's hard. And so I think I just came to a realization, I think one day, just looking at who I was spending time with and thinking, is this where I want to go? Is
mm,
this where I want to end up? Because a lot of these people are not going to make it. And to be
mm.
honest with you, I mean, some of these guys were later murdered,
Oh, wow.
incarcerated,
Wow.
you name it. They were not, they did not, they did not progress in life very well. And, their life was cut pretty short,
Mm.
which was really sad.
That's pretty interesting that you were able to have that introspection as a middle schooler. Because I can tell you right now, speaking from personal experience, I did not have those thoughts in middle school. I was homeschooled all the way up until sixth grade. And
Mm.
then I was thrown into middle school. My parents lived, but literally, I lived with my siblings. My parents lived 6 hours away. And I could have just as easily fallen into the same trap. And I did. I had my run-ins with the miscreants, but I never really went into the criminal stuff like you. But nonetheless, I certainly never had any awareness of like these are the wrong type of people. I started realizing that around 35. I started looking at my circle, 35, 40 really, and I was like I did it again at 40, but I started saying like you are a byproduct of the people you surround yourself with. And I sort of read that line somewhere and I started analyzing like, well, who are my friends? Everyone goes out and gets drunk every night. All they want to do is like watch TV on the weekends or go golfing and stay away from their family. They're not being very good fathers. And I was like, I don't really know if the people I'm hanging with are really the right type of people.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen until I was like 35 years old. So I started kind of analyzing that. How the hell are you making those introspective decisions as a middle schooler?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you this. My mom had gotten clean, got married,
Mm,
um, and then relapsed when I was
mm,
in middle school. And so my mom spent, 28 days in treatment. It was an inpatient facility. So she was there the whole time. And there was a lot of things that we did as a family. We had family visit days, and I spent a lot of time not only talking to my mom, but also talking to other people who had drug problems, who had alcohol problems, and you know how they got there, the things that they did. And I went to some counseling, talked to a counselor because I had a lot of, misgivings and anger and stuff that I even carried on well into my adulthood. I'd like to tell you I solved all these problems when I was in eighth grade, but I didn't. And it was really a time for me to really reflect. My
mm,
mom's in treatment. I'm around all these guys that are trying to make their life work, but
mm,
have tried over and over again and have failed because it's just so hard to beat addiction. And it was a real eye opener for me, honestly, being around those kind of guys and hearing their stories
yeah.
and hearing the candidness and frankness of when you've done horrendous things and now you're trying to make amends and atone for those things. Just being around that, I think, made me really think about where I wanted to go next with my own life and what I wanted to do. And it was interesting because I left my junior high in eighth grade, and actually I was asked not to return. It was not voluntary, and I went to a private Catholic school here in Salt Lake, and I didn't know anyone at this school, and it changed my life. It was an opportunity for me to have a fresh start, with different people and just do something different, kind of turn the page where no one knew who I was. No one had known what kind of trouble I'd gotten into. And so that's kind of where that came from is
Interesting.
that kind of catalyzing moment.
I'm always fascinated by the antithetical impact negativity can have on people's lives if a couple of things line up. I don't know if it's luck or if it's synchronicity or what it is, and you can go woo woo all you want in this conversation, but there are obviously pathways that people take and decisions that they make, and it's like one decision that will literally could ripple the rest of your life, right? And so,
Yeah.
in your case, you made a decision that changed the entire trajectory of your life. And I'm just always fascinated by, I had negative experience as a child. Most of my family members, I'm one of 12 kids, and every one of my siblings is doing something pretty marvelous with their life today. But we had horrible parents who really just didn't. Sorry, I shouldn't say horrible parents. My dad was abusive. I think there was some method to his madness, whether he knew it or not.
Hmm.
But if nothing else, the antithetical impact was like, there is no way in hell I'm going to be 60 years old and have nothing to my name or be abusive to my children or any of those things. And so, like, my life quest has been to be exactly opposite of everything
Yeah.
that he did to me. And it's funny how, if you're aware of it like you are and aware of it like I was, that those can actually be motivating driving forces. But
Yeah.
we're going to get to the shadows
Yeah.
of those early beginnings, and if you don't unpack
Absolutely.
them, I would love to get your feedback on that.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I like to talk about the purpose of Next and sort of what you're doing. What do you do, and ultimately what drives you beneath the surface of all of this?
Yeah. So my work has evolved into what I call transformational leadership. And what that is taking a leader and creating real change in the way they think and in the way they act so that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve in life, either through their business or sometimes this is even personal life things. That's kind of the work that I do. And really the catalyst for this for me was growing up, one of the things that I didn't really feel like I had was an advocate.
Mm,
I just needed someone to advocate for me. And I found that there were very few people willing to do it. And the number wasn't zero, but it was very small. And what I realized is that we all need someone to advocate for our own greatness, to see the things in us that we can't see because we're too close to it, right? We
hmm
can't read the label when we're inside the bottle. And we need someone to just look at us and say, "Hey, you can do that.
mm.
There's no reason why you can't." Let's unpack how. Let's unpack what's getting in your way. Let's have the conversations that we've been avoiding having. And that was kind of the catalyst for me
Mm.
in that work. That's what I enjoyed in coaching.
So, if I can we jump into that just a little bit? I'd
Yeah.
like to learn a little bit more about how you do that. Do you have a structured programs? Is it more about just meeting people where they are? What's your sort of philosophies around coaching, and how do you lead transformational leadership? How do you unpack that for somebody?
Yeah. It's very unstructured, but it has a framework to it in that we identify really clearly where someone is at currently.
Hmm
And a lot of times where people think they're at is not really where they're at. So let's say, as an example, that someone has cultural issues within their team. And they say, "Hey, Brandon, what I really need to do is I need to have better communication and culture with the team." But what we discover is there's not really any clarity about what the culture is supposed to be and what the business is about. So that might come in the form of a mission or values or something like that. So we're like, okay, well, before we talk about the team and we engage there, we should get clear on the foundation of your business and go there. So I spend a lot of time helping someone get clear on where they're really at in the situation, and where they think they're at sometimes is not really where they're at.
hmm
So they think they're one place and they're really somewhere else. So
hmm
we do that. Then we talk about where do you want to go? Like, where do you want to be? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And what's interesting about the question is, and really a lot of what I do for work centers around this question: what do you want?
mm
Most people don't know. They kind of think they know, they're a little clear about it, but they don't really know what they want. They know what people have told them what they want, they know what society expects them to want, They have all that stuff mixed in with what they really want, and so they're not really clear about it. So we help them get clear. And then we identify, hey, what are the things right now that are present that are keeping you from moving towards that destination? Because for everyone who wants to accomplish something, there is a cost to doing it that we're either present to or we're not present to. So what I do is help people get present to the cost of making whatever change they want to make in their life or move in whatever direction they want to move, even when that direction seems positive, right? It's like, hey, I'd like to be less argumentative as a person. Great. What's that going to cost you? Oh, I don't think it costs me anything. It does, right? You hold on to that for a reason. Let's identify what that is. So that's kind of really at the crux of the work I do. And then I spend time in spaces with people really working through that and creating solutions together to help them move forward in a powerful way.
So using your example, someone who's overly argumentative, the cost, if I can just better understand that, the cost to them is this makes them feel better about themselves and therefore they hold on to it because they're not willing to sort of unpack the shadows behind it. Is that sort of where we're going with this, or is there
Yeah.
something a different
Yeah.
meaning
Or,
behind
or to take that in a different direction, the cost is being liked and
that?
being available and open.
Mm,
So if I'm argumentative and I'm prickly and I'm difficult, people don't get close.
mm. So the
Or
cost to them, I see what you're getting.
yeah, the
So
cost
I
to,
took it the other direction. So it's not what my resources and energy that I would have to pour in that. It's
no.
it's like what's the impact, the cause, and
Yeah.
the effect sort of
Where
things.
does it strip away my identity
Hmm.
that I currently have now around this?
Hmm. And that centers around something that's very near and dear to me is this whole idea of cause and effect, and
Mhm.
sort of like what your inputs are your outputs, and everything's just sort of a reflection of who you are.
Yeah.
And I do something very similar in my branding work with clients. It's sort of like, where is your brand now? Where do you want it to be? And what are the coordinates, and what does it look like for those gaps in between that we have to solve? So that's pretty interesting. Do you see that there's a common element in most people that you work with in these gaps that you're finding, or is there this varied from person to person?
I mean, it's really different from person to person. I mean, I think that there's two things that I really focus on with someone, and there's two types of people that I think that work in the world. There's relational people, and there's people who are very task oriented. So a relational person tends to be a people pleaser. They're very much about spending time. If they were to take a love language test, quality time might be up there in their scope. And the great thing about being a relational person is you always make time for people. They feel special, they feel valued. It's great. The problem with it is, as you mentioned, shadow sides is I get taken advantage of, I become a people pleaser. And unfortunately, underneath everything is this resentment about what people take from me because I don't have good boundaries. So we talk about how to transform relationships so they can be more productive.
Mm,
Because the problem a relational person has at work is they're not as productive as they can be because everyone takes their energy and their time and uses it for their own productivity.
mm,
Now, on the flip side, is a tasker. This is near and dear to my heart. I'm a tasker. I go on a hike. Guess what I want to know? How fast can we get to the end? How don't I'm not worried about the scenery, the flowers, the animals, you name it. I'm like, how quickly do we get to the end? And what happens is as a leader early on in my career, I valued tasks over people. I treated people like tools. And that's the biggest problem with a tasker in an organizational setting is they treat people like they're disposable, like they're a wrench or a hammer, instead of recognizing the humanity behind their work and then speaking to that humanity. So I help taskers get in touch with their heart and less in their head and less about doing and finding that balance between productivity and the inefficiency of people because people are not efficient. So helping them balance those two things. That's kind of what I do with people predominantly. And all the problems that they have tend to be in those buckets in some way, shape, or form.
Do you prefer working with relational or task-oriented people?
It doesn't matter. I like both of them.
What are you?
Tasker.
You're a tasker.
Yes.
Are people hybrids?
Yeah, for sure. For
Interesting.
sure. And look, it doesn't mean I'm not personable, right? it just means that when it comes right down to it, if you want to sit down and unpack your day with me, but I got a to-do list that's like 10 long and you're doing this, like I'm irritated
Mm.
by the fact that you're bothering me with your life because I got stuff to do. So I've had to learn how to take time to task and take time for people in my life and at work.
So if you suddenly tell me you have to go on this podcast, that means that you're yearning for your to-do list that you have to do. Is
That's
that how I
right.
read that?
Well, you
I
know what?
won't be offended.
I've cleared the headspace for this, so we're good.
Has your purpose around running what you do for your business, has that evolved over time since you've been an entrepreneur?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean,
Where
oh
was
yeah,
it and how did, I guess I'm always curious, where was it and then what is it now? And just sort of the segues and the integrations in between.
yeah, definitely. So at first I thought consulting was the thing I wanted to do. Like I wanted to be a person who advised and fixed and solved. Awesome. So doing that for a few years, I got clients, we did some work, but what I recognized is that people's follow through and execution,
Mhm.
the things that I needed them to execute on typically didn't happen. And listen, as a consultant, you're only as good as your client's success and their ability to execute. And if they don't meet you in the parts where they need to meet you to take it all the way, then they're not going to have the results that they want. And ultimately, who they're going to blame is you.
Absolutely.
And so I thought, okay, something's missing. So I kind of shifted into this hybrid thing where I kind of got into I kind of did consulting. I kind of went back to my coaching roots. I took an ICF class, did my ACC, and started bringing more of a coach approach into the consulting. And then I created kind of a methodology because I thought what I needed to do was I needed something like at the time, and this is before EOS, I needed something like Gazelles. If you know Vern Harnish, he has a book or a program now. I think it's just called Scale or something like that. But I felt like I needed a methodology. Like people kept telling me, you need a methodology that people can understand. So I created this methodology called Total Experience Design. And the idea of Total Experience Design was that I want to work with service-based businesses who want to focus on the delivered experience. Like that's the way to stand out in markets where commoditization is heavy.
Mm.
Dentistry, chiropractic, massage therapy, automotive repair, you name it, right? Health spas, every place where price can come up. How do we deliver an extraordinary experience? And so I created this whole methodology. I'm not going to bore everyone with this, but six pillars, a whole workbook, all this kind of stuff. And then I realized I don't want to be a cookie cutter like, hey, when you work with me, we do these 6 steps and then we're done. I just wanted to work with people in their particular area, in their issue, their problems, their challenges right here in this moment, and help them work through that so that they came out on the other side a better leader, a better person, and they were receiving the fruits of doing that as a result. That's kind of in a nutshell how that evolved.
This transformation that you talk about, this is sort of the end game to your services. It's the problem that you solve for your
Yeah.
clients. Can you speak to a little bit about and not only the problem that you're solving, this transformation itself? I know it's different things for different people, right?
Yeah.
But how do you uniquely solve it outside of the 6 pillars? And again, we've talked a little bit about it. You go into these, you have a methodology that you've created, but there's also a lot of customization to it and meeting people where they are. And I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get at sort of the heart of who you
Yeah.
are as a coach and how you interact with people, especially if you're more of a task-oriented individual.
Yeah. So I'll give you some examples that kind of flavor this up a little bit. I had a client who wanted me to coach his kid who was in college and he was stuck.
Mm.
And so what he wanted help with is how do I get him unstuck? So great. So we did a couple calls, and towards the end of a second call, the kid said to me, he's like, well, I'm like, well, how are you going to move forward? I asked him some kind of question like that. And he said, well, I have to finish. Like, I have to finish. Like, I have no choice. And I said, no, you don't.
Have to finish college.
Yeah, I have to finish college. And he
Hmm.
was really close. He was like a semester and a half away.
Hmm.
And he's like, I have to finish. And I said, no, you don't. And he's like, no, no, I have to. My dad said, I said, if you really don't want to, I think your dad would be okay with you not doing it, provided that you have an idea of what else you're going to do. But I said, you could quit school right now. You're an adult. You could do whatever you want. And you could see the light turn on in his eyes where he was like, "Oh my God." I had never considered the fact that here he is, he's in bondage to his own obligation.
That's a really
Said,
good title for a program, In Bondage to Your Own Isolation.
yeah. The minute I said there's a door right there, you can walk out, he was like, "Oh my God." Now, what was funny is his dad called me that night and he said, "Why'd you tell my kid he could quit school?" Now he was joking around, but he kind of gave me crap. He's like, "Why'd you say that?" And I said, he needed to hear it because if he's not there for him, if he's there because of some obligation from you or someone else, either spoken or unspoken, then he's going to resist what he wants to do. Now, ironically, that was the shift that got him unstuck. He got his grades up, started engaging in school again, finished his last semester, graduated from college. I
Mm,
ran into the kid at he actually moved here to Salt Lake. He was from Idaho. And I ran into him at an auto store like probably 6 months ago. And
that's
he was
wild.
telling me what he was doing with his career and all that. Awesome. Worked with another person, owns a vet pathology lab in Seattle, CEO. But her problem is, I don't think I'm a CEO. I don't think I'm qualified to be a CEO of a company this size. And the growth is scaring me, all these kinds of things. And so, what I did was helped her to reframe what it means to be a CEO, how she wants to behave as a CEO, and also giving her the permission and courage to let go of some of the work that she was doing because she felt like she had to be the one to do it. And so a lot of times when I talk about an advocate, someone will say, "Well, I have to do this." And what I say is, "No, you don't.
Mm,
Like, you don't have to." And I'll help you think through how to transition through this, how to communicate it, how to organize it, all those kinds of things. I'll work with you through that and walk with you on that process. Now, her work has transformed significantly. Now, looking at buying a business in the UK.
wow.
She went from "I'm not a CEO" to "how do we buy and acquire other businesses" and doing all this work. And so the transformation was significant
Mm,
for her, and her quality of life as a result of letting go of that inferiority has been tremendous. So
well,
hopefully that helps to kind of
yeah.
just give some illustrations of, high level what I do.
Well said. It sounds to me like a majority of what you do, at least in those two stories, is more mindset shifting. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you do operational coaching as well, or would you say primarily what you do is centered around shifting mindsets?
Well, the first thing that we look at is mindset because your premise will determine your action.
Absolutely.
So if my premise is wrong, everything I do after that doesn't matter. And so I'm a very organized, structured person.
Yeah, you're a
If people
tasker.
want, if people want that, I will bring that to them. I will
Mm,
put that into their world and I will help them work through that. Now, I'm very careful about how I do this because it can't be my solution. It has to be theirs.
mm,
So we put up guardrails, we kind of give ideas, we kind of throw some things out there, and then we shape it together.
mm.
And I do a lot of work with teams
Why is that so important that they find the answer and you're not giving it to them?
because for a lot of people, if I don't take ownership of it, if I'm not really owning it, then it becomes this thing that the consultant told me to do. And now I'm not as thrilled about it, and I don't really own it because I didn't come up with the structure. And the other thing is we're all different, right? Like how you and I work is going to be different. So if I try to give you my methodology of how to work, it's not going to work. But what I try to do is unlock your best methodology based on who you are, how you think, what you want. This is a way that you can move forward in an organized, structured way. And so it's really important for people to really understand that for themselves so they take complete ownership. So they're not like, "Well, this consultant told me to do it, but I don't really believe in that." So I tell people, "Hey, I'm going to make a suggestion. If you like it, take it. If you don't, then don't move forward."
Hmm.
Because if you're not a believer in what you're doing, your team's going to know it, you're going to feel phony and
Mm,
it's not going to work. Like short term, it might, long term, it'll fail.
mm.
So, so I'll help people with that. And then teams, I help them really with team dynamics. I've had to learn, and through a coach approach, really how to grow and develop team members and really get the most out of people. That's one of the gifts that I had as a corporate employee and a leader
Mm.
is taking someone from point A to point B in their career and getting them, helping them to get there and seeing the potential in them. So I help people really work in the team dynamic space, especially. So there's three things that I look at. Number one, what is your game? Do you know what it is? So if you don't know what your game is, you can't play it. Number two, how do you want to play your game? That's the organizational piece. And then number three is, are you winning your game? And how do you know? How do you measure the results? How do you know if what you're doing is quote unquote the right things?
In terms of these approaches, these methodologies, these three things that you look at, these are all iterative things that you've slowly developed over time working with
Yeah.
clients and kind of just keep evolving. It's a perpetual evolution, right? You're
Yeah.
constantly growing or expanding or you're not. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, and I don't say this lightly. I've been in the entrepreneurial space for almost 20 years now. I spent 15 years in corporate. I think a lot of people take for granted how much time, energy, and resources you actually have to put into building yourself, building your business, growing the thing, whatever that thing is. And especially now, and I look at some of I have children of my own. I don't know if you have children, but I look at sort of this idea of instant gratification and these expectations that everything should be working out just like tomorrow. And
Yeah.
I use my oldest daughter. She's a freshman in college, just finished her freshman year. She's transferring schools because she decided, after all, she's a really prolific soccer player. Didn't think she wanted to play soccer in college, but now she changed her mind, so she's transferring schools so she can play soccer. Yada yada yada. I went out training with her yesterday, and she has this sort of mindset of, "Dad, I'm never going to make it because I'm out of shape." And I'm like, "You literally haven't touched a soccer ball in 1 year. You just went on the field. It's 96 degrees outside. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What the hell do you expect is going to happen in
Right.
1 hour? Like you have an entire summer, first of all, to get prepared for
Yeah.
this, and like you just can't expect to show up and have immediate results." And I'm pivoting with this because I do coaching as well. I think that a lot of people have these false expectations that because they hired a coach, that they should suddenly have the answers overnight and be able to just suddenly throw out and expand their business. Is this a fallacy that you see? And if so, how do you react to that?
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time with people before we ever work together. So I do something that a sales and marketing consultant once told me never to do. I let people try before they buy. So
Mm,
I let people experience coaching with me for a session or two before we ever decide to work together. And part of that is I want to see how they show up in the relationship. And it gives me the opportunity to set good ground rules. And so I don't see a lot of these expectations with people only because this is how I've evolved my business. Now, early on in my business, my criteria for who I worked with was, do you have money? And then I'll take money from you and I'll do my damnedest to give you the results you're looking for. Now, over time, I realized that, hey, there's some customers I don't want to work with. And
sure.
if, like, I had a guy set up a call with me, he said, hey, can you help me make $10,000 in the next 30 days? I'm in a real bind. And I said, I'm not your guy. Like, if you want a miracle, if you want, like, some kind of like Hail Mary, I'm not your guy. Like, I'm not here to say, I'm going to create $10,000 for you, knowing very little about you, your business, all those kinds of things. And so I, I work really hard to create a container of, does someone really want to do the work? So what I ask people before we start working together is, are you willing to let go all of the stuff that we've talked about that get in your way and do something different? And sometimes I'll give them an exercise, I'll give them something to do that will demonstrate whether they're willing to do that work or not. So that's the stuff I kind of look at right up front to someone really willing to do the work right now. And I've had to tell people at the end of a couple of free sessions, hey, you're not ready yet.
Mm,
Like, you're not ready to let go of this because of some of the things you're holding on to and all those kinds of things. Like, you're not ready for that. And
mm,
so, and then a lot of times I tell people, look, depending on what issue we're dealing with, things might get worse before they get better. if we have to deconstruct some things and really get honest with people about what's happening and where you're at, they're not going to like that. You start giving your team boundaries and you've never given boundaries before. Guess what? A couple of them might quit
Yeah.
or they'll be pissed at you. So you have to be ready for that so that you can get to the other side of it, which is the life that you want or the business that you want, those kinds of things. So
Mm.
I'm really careful to position that right up front as, look, this is what it is. This is what it's not. Here's an experience of it so you can see it for yourself. We're going to find out what really makes you tick. And then I'm going to ask you, are you really willing to be a different person? Because it's going to cost you something. You've got to ask yourself, am I willing to let that identity go? And if you're not ready yet, no harm, no foul. I'll reach out in 6 months, see how you're doing. We'll stay in touch, go from there. If you're ready, let's move forward. Let's do the work.
It's an interesting disposition. Are you willing to let this version of yourself go? And I think a lot of people probably struggle with that because that version of themselves is their comfort zone. And if the fight or flight and all the different things that are going to happen if you do let that go kick
Yeah.
in. And I don't know that a lot of people are comfortable with being uncomfortable. I see it. And again, that's not a judgment, just an observation. Let's talk
Right.
about you comfortable being uncomfortable. When you talk about you as an individual and your beliefs and your values and how you show up in the world and your personal side of things. What are some of the sort of line in the sands on your values? Like what values guide who you are, Brandon Allen?
I have 5 personal values. One is Christ-centered living.
Mhm.
So that is, an aspirational thing. I try to live as Christ-like as I possibly can. Some of you who've met me on the street may or may not have seen an alternate version of that, but I apologize. Family is number 2. Growth is a third. Like I'm always looking for opportunities to grow. I want to push myself and look for different opportunities. Loyalty is another one that's really important to me. And I'm trying to think of what the 5th one is, but it's escaping me at the moment. But those are 4 right there.
In terms of, if we can, I don't want to go too deeply into it, but I am always fascinated by the whole idea of Christ-like and spirituality and sort of using that as it's like for me, because I'm very spiritual, it's a litmus for me to sort of understand, am I showing up how I feel like somebody, if I wasn't me and I was talking to me, would I
Yeah.
like me? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yep.
And a lot of that behavior centers around having some sort of a mentor, even if it's a spiritual mentor. And I'm always curious when people say, yeah, like being Christ-like or having God in my life or following Buddha or being very spiritual, it's literally been like a roadmap for me. What does that do for you, just on a larger scale, having some sort of spiritual guidelines, whether it's God, Jesus, whoever you choose to believe in, what does that do for an individual? What does having some sort of a moral compass do for you as a human?
Okay. The first thing is my limiting belief for a long time, and something I still struggle with is, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? And, not growing up with a father, this is the thing that I
I
just
feel
thought,
that.
man, my dad would stick around if I was worth it. And
Hmm,
so I'm clearly
interesting.
not. Now, when you have Christ in your life, as an example, I have a friend all the time, right? I have a friend, and what that God says is that, listen, um, you're not good enough all the time, right? You're not perfect, but you're loved and you're redeemed.
Mm,
And so all the mistakes that I've made, all the things that I've done, I can go back and think that I'm loved and redeemed.
mm,
And, people will say all the time that, hey, Christians are hypocrites. We are.
mm,
And so is everyone else because no one's perfect, right? The difference between, my ethic and someone else's is that I know I'm a sinner and I need a savior. Like I
mm,
need that. And for me, what it helped me to do is reshape my identity in the Church of Brandon, which was the church I subscribed to for a long time. It was a really crappy church. Attendance was really low. And I shifted into this idea of letting go of the anger,
mm,
bringing forgiveness into my life, and really looking at what does it mean to truly love other people.
mm,
And look, it's a challenging way of life. How do
mm,
I love my enemy? how do I love this person I just had a dispute with that I live with?
Mm.
Those things can be really challenging, but it's helped me to recenter my life in less of a selfish way and trying to orient myself in a more loving way through the gift of what to get overly spiritual here, but the gift of the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
and what that means. And so in a nutshell, as crude as that is, I guess that's what it's done for me.
No, I appreciate your answer. And it's funny you said that, releasing your anger and your resentment and blame and all those sorts of things, because whether you believe in Jesus or God or Allah or Lao Tzu or the Buddha, they all say the same thing, like holding on to this resentment, holding on to this anger.
Yeah.
It really goes nowhere. It's just going to
Yeah.
it's a cancerous welt that's just going to grow and grow. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
you say that. In terms of, I'm a huge believer, and I think it sounds like you are as well, this whole idea that your personal development and your professional development, who you are as an individual and who you are as a business owner, they kind of go hand in hand, because if you're not able to show up as an individual, then you're going to show up the same way and imbue that into your business. And so I'm curious, what do you, Brandon Allen, in the Church of Brandon Allen, what do you believe in, and what are you doing around your personal development in terms of keeping fit mentally, emotionally, physically, nutritionally, et cetera? Like, what are some of the things that you do as an individual to sort of maintain that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, everything that I do, I try to have a philosophy for why I do it. And so, right now I'm in the midst of recovery from an Achilles rupture.
Ooh, that's not
So the
fun.
physical side of things has really taken a back seat. But normally, I look forward to getting out and moving. And for me personally, like I go to Orange Theory. That's where I work out. I've worked out there for like 5 or 6 years. I love going to a gym where there's other people, that someone's telling me what to do. This is like I just said, I don't like to be told what to do. At the gym, I love being told what to do. I don't want to
Sure.
come up with my own
Well, you're a
ideas,
coach. I would assume you would appreciate that. Yeah.
my own strategies. I
Yeah.
like when someone else tells me, "Hey, this is the template for today. This is what we're doing," and they're helping me get through that. So, I'm a big believer in movement and physical activity for stress relief, for ideas. I was a runner in college. I still run, and so going out on a 10-mile run is a great time to just really think, reflect, all those kinds of things. I love it. Spirituality for me, it was just really understanding, like, what do I believe, and then believing that.
Mm,
Like, either disprove it or prove it or come to a satisfactory conclusion that you believe this.
mm,
Don't sit in this. What I did in college was I sat in this whole space of everything's true, everything's great. And look, if you're that kind of person who believes that, I'm not throwing any shade at you. It just didn't work for me, because I'm like, what do I do here? So I'm like, I want to pick a lane, and I want to be in on that. Like, either I like it or I don't like it. And if I don't, I have a reason why. If I do, I have a reason why. Like, I'm not one of those people that, like, hey, have you ever read the Bible? Do you know what that says? Yeah. Like, every year I do. Right. So it's like, that's important to me family wise, because I have 4 daughters. I didn't have a dad. And so for me, I'm very intentional about, spending time leaning in to their lives, having a relationship with them, their friends, all those kinds of things. For me at work, it's really about using, I think we're made to work. I think we're called to work.
yeah.
I think that that's a gift, that's something that we can use our talents and abilities to
Yeah.
bless other people through our own purpose.
I
And
agree.
so, I want to do that to the best of my abilities. How do I make people's lives better because of the gifts that I have, so that I can help them bring out their gifts at a more expansive or deep level? So I mean, I have a lot of philosophies and thoughts about, how I raise kids, just to give you an example, like how I lead. So as an example, as a parent, you know, I have 12 points in my parental philosophy. One of them is, my kids do not, I don't live for my kids. My kids don't live for me. So they can choose what activities they want.
Yeah.
Their behavior is not a reflection on my abilities, right? So if they do something wrong, it doesn't mean that I'm a crappy parent. It means they made a decision in that moment that was not a great decision. Now, that could be because of something I did, but maybe it's not. So I've kind of written some things down that kind of help guide me that way as a leader. And I put things in here that help me play to my strengths, but also play away from my weaknesses.
Mm,
So one of my things in my leadership philosophy is everyone I come across has value. And I put that in there not because it's a strength, because it's a weakness. And I have to remember that people are not tools, they're people.
Mm.
Everyone has inherent value, see it, and challenge myself to experience it. So, just some examples there. I mean, I really think about everything that I do. How do I be intentional and have a philosophy for what I do and why?
What are your strengths if you had to list five of your best qualities?
I think I'm very naturally intuitive in terms of like seeing patterns and understanding what people say and finding where that might lead, like where
Hmm.
that might mean. So, being able to ask a question that really draws someone
Hmm.
out in people.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think, I'm a good connector
Hmm.
with people. So, like, when we're in a space and we're connecting, I listen deeply. I will connect at a high level. I love chaos and making order out of it.
Mm.
So if you put me in a hoarder's house and said, organize this, like some people would look at that and be like, hell no, I'm not going in there. I'm not doing that. I'd be thrilled to go in there and just like, how do we make this functional and working and all that stuff? So sometimes when I'm working with a leader, they're feeling like, hey, like all this stuff is chaos. And I'm like, cool.
Mm.
Like, let's just take it one step at a time. So I think those are a couple of things that I feel like I do really well.
And your greatest learning opportunities or failures that you're sort of struggling with, or your weaknesses, do you look at it that way?
My greatest learning opportunities is one relationally and still being present with people's pain,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I have a tendency to want to move people out of their pain
Hmm.
too soon and not be with it, not really
Hmm.
just experience that with them.
Like
It's always
staying
a
mindful
challenge.
and grounded with it. Hmm.
Yeah, just being in that, right? Not, like your kid comes home, they didn't make the team, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, here's what we can do, and let's get
Yeah.
you into this camp, and there's always next year,
Yeah.
Johnny. It's like, no,
You're a
like
problem solver.
just sit in it and be like, you know what, that sucks, man.
Uh,
I know what it feels like to not make a team. I've had that happen. Like,
yeah.
just be in it with them. Like, that's a real challenge for me. And then I tend to be a very decisive person, like a quick thinker, but sometimes I need to just wait just a second or two longer and really think it through before I take action. So yeah, I have a tendency to rush into something or say something that I should have just paused a minute
Hmm.
or a second or two, and I would have realized I should say something else or do something else.
Hmm. I relate to that one on trying to problem solve all the time, and I always have to catch myself. And I was taught this lesson a hard way by a girlfriend many years ago, and she's like, "I don't recall asking you for your feedback," and I was like, "But it's so glaringly obvious to me right now. I just
Yeah.
here's how you fix it right now." And
Yep.
I've always been a fixer as well. So,
Yeah. It's not
um,
about the nail. I got to remember
yeah,
that all the time.
totally. But it's hard. It's like it is a it's an affliction and a curse at the same time as it is a quality and attribute that can lead to great things. But
Yeah.
people don't always want feedback. I literally talked about this morning. It's like some people literally don't want feedback, and that's all there is
Yeah.
to it. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's not a
Yeah.
reflection on who you are as an individual. So don't take it personally. I usually will take it personal. I'm like, what do you mean you don't want my feedback, man? Do you know who
Yeah.
I think I am? So interesting. Well, man, I appreciate it. What's the best way that people can find you if they want to connect with you, Brandon?
Go to newworkrevolution.com. You can check out what we're up to there, newsletters, all that good stuff. And then, I mean, you can find me anywhere: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. I'm there also.
And we just got connected on LinkedIn, so I'm going to follow you and call you out on some things there. Why revolution? What's the revolution you're causing?
For me, I believe that people should enjoy the work environments they work in. And the way they do that is through great leadership.
Mm.
So when we make great leaders, we have better environments that people operate in because of that leadership.
You've built something from the ground up, like most of the founders and creatives and entrepreneurs that come on this show. If you were talking to a younger version of yourself right now, to a founder in the middle of building whatever it is they're building, their mess, their chaos, what advice would you give them or yourself right now?
I would have said believe in yourself sooner and go all in. Like
Hmm.
really go all in mentally, physically, emotionally. Believe in yourself and just and own that from the start.
Why do you think people need a coach? Why do they need Brandon Allen in their lives or anybody else for that matter as a coach?
Yeah. Well, no one needs a coach. So I'm going to say that. That's weird to say because I am a coach. But why should people want a coach? For me, we're too close to problems. right? It's hard. Like, you do branding work, storytelling work. It's so easy to tell someone else's story. It's so hard to tell your own.
Sure.
So I think it's helping people, like it's a mirror, right? So I can reflect how they're being, what they're doing off of me so they can see it for the first time clearly. And
Hmm.
I think all of us needs people who believe in us.
Yep.
So when I work with a client and I take a client on, it's because I believe in that person. I believe in what they're doing and I believe that they can accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. And so I think, those are things that, I'm not smarter than other people or any of those things, but I care and I will be an advocate for someone's greatness. And what happens when people get the help that they're needing and that they want is that they get things done faster, right? They look back on a year, 6 months, 18 months, and they think, I can't believe how much I accomplished. I had a client that wanted to start this fellowship program for their business, and they said it was a 10-year goal. We got it done in 18 months. 10-year goal, 18 months because of support and a pathway and all those kinds of things.
I love that. I recently started coaching my daughter's high school lacrosse team, and it was a wonderful learning opportunity for me. Having never played lacrosse,
Yeah.
I only coached because the program was going to fail. And my daughter was like, "Dad, you're an athlete. I coach soccer." He's like, "You can certainly coach lacrosse." I was like, "I don't think I can coach lacrosse. I know nothing about the sport, but I'm a student of the game, so I'm going to learn." So I watched
Yeah.
copious amounts of YouTube channels, spoke to coaches everywhere I could. But one of the things that I had an observation about myself in that process is that I do think everybody needs a coach. Need
Yeah.
is a strong word, but I think I like how you repositioned it. But I do think everybody needs a coach because we're not able
Yeah.
to read our own label.
Yep.
But one of the things I noticed in the process of coaching is how much I learn about myself and how I show up to the different types of people and their needs. And
Yeah.
that you can't coach, no two people need the same thing, and no
Yeah.
two people's needs are the same, and no two people's purpose and and the outcome that you create for them is going to be the same. And I
Yeah.
realize that I realized this in the process because I've primarily only coached quite qualified athletes before, and most of the people that I coached in this program had never even played the sport. And so
Yeah.
in the process of me learning, I was teaching them what I had learned because they needed it just as much as I did. But I realized there's a huge gap when you show up as a coach, and here's where I'm going with this. It is a brilliant honor, and I'm humbled by it. And I'm wondering, I'm assuming you are as well, where you have the opportunity to affect someone's trajectory, whether they're a
Yeah.
lacrosse player or a businessman or woman. You're taking somebody and helping them see the reflection, if they will, from where they are to where they want to be and helping them close the gaps in between. And you are literally altering the entire trajectory of somebody's life. And to be
Yeah.
able to do that with impact and transformation like you do and still remain in the game and nimble and active, man, it's a brilliant quality to possess. And all the shout outs in the world to you and people like you for being able to take something and you had a shitty background and a shitty upbringing, but still change that for yourself to cause a positive ripple in the universe. And I really admire that. It's why I have multiple coaches because I always am sort of like, I need sounding boards, I need advice, I need insights, and I can't always want to, I don't always want to bother my wife with that. So it's like,
Right.
having a coach in your corner, I cannot speak the volumes of why if you're in business and you're building something or anything for that matter, find somebody who you can that can be in your corner and hold you accountable and be your cheerleader. And I really appreciate you doing that. So anyhow,
Yeah.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
This is Brandon Allen. If you want to find him, the show notes will show exactly where you can find him, his social media. He's on LinkedIn, Instagram, his website, all those things, and I'll put those in the show notes. Brandon, thank you for being a guest today, man, and sharing your wisdom and your insights with my audience. I really do appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Brandon, for another amazing episode on the Branding Laboratory. On today's episode, I sit down with business strategist and leadership coach Brandon Allen, a man whose story blends raw truth with some structured wisdom, and you're going to hear that throughout the show. We talked about journey from corporate life to entrepreneurship in 2008, and how his early life growing up without a dad and without a mother, or with a mother struggling with addiction, shaped both his resistance to authority and his desire to make other people's lives better. And one theme echoed throughout the conversation: you don't fall into the trap unless you refuse to learn from it. And I love that takeaway, sort of that, at least that's my takeaway, if you will. his evolution from reacting to authority negatively to becoming a calm, strategic leader, it wasn't just business or about business. It was deeply personal for Brandon. And he really today is trying to help leaders navigate that same transformation by getting clear on what they want and noticing what's keeping them distracted and really doing the hard work of self-awareness, which I can't speak to enough, and why more people should spend time on personal introspection. And throughout the conversation, I was trying to sort of get at how do founders and leaders get unstuck when they've become the bottleneck in their own business, but at the same time not overworking, but working smarter. And so we explored through that conversation how many entrepreneurs live in bondage to their own isolation, which is a really phenomenal quote. And I'm going to use that. Please, Brandon, forgive me and thank you in advance. By trying to do everything alone and holding on to these fixed mindsets and resisting this transformational feedback that actually moves people forward. It's why I got into coaching as well, and why I do what I do. It's like I believe we have a moral social obligation to help people. If you have a gift, you have a moral social obligation to share that gift with other people. And Brandon is doing that. And I was just really inspired by some of the stuff he said. I loved how he shared how most people either operate as relational or task oriented, and how recognizing what your natural default actually is enables you or allows you to build better teams, better person, but build yourself, create real systems that have impact, and lead with empathy and with effectiveness. And that was really kind of a touching for me to hear someone else say that. There's just a lot of really pieces from this episode that really resonated with me. It's important to have advocacy, which is why you hire a coach in the first place. And it doesn't matter how good your methodology is if you're completely misaligned. You have to love what you do, and you have to know what kind of leader you want to become. And that's essential for running any type of business. And I love what he said because I don't know if I agree with the need or the want piece around coaching, but he said people don't need a coach because they're lost. They need one because it gets them there faster. It helps them close that gap. And there's nothing like having somebody in your corner who roots for you, who cheers for you, but holds you accountable to the marks that you're unable to hold yourself accountable to. So, anyhow, my key takeaways: what can you learn from this show and instill into your life and put into your life today? Ask yourself today, what is keeping you distracted? What's one question, or that's the one question that you can uncover where you're avoiding the work or you're hiding from your discomfort. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then the second one is you need to audit yourself. Audit your leadership style. Audit how you're showing up. Are you relational? Are you task oriented? Because using those insights that you glean from that question can help you build complementary support around you instead of duplicating your blind spot. So what's the one thing you can do with that today? It's all great and all good and great to have that information, but what can you do it? I would like to ask you or challenge you to identify one area right now where you feel stuck. And I want you to bring someone into it. Hopefully not just your wife or your husband or your partner, whether it's a coach, whether it's a friend, whether you find a mentor, whether you join a mastermind group, or even just another team member that you trust. Don't stay in isolation. Growth really accelerates when you invite alternative perspectives into your process. And it's crazy. You hear me say this all the time. When two people are gathered together, the compounding ripple you can create just with two people is it supersedes on every level what you can do individually. So, where do I come into play? A shameless plug here. One thing I do with every single client is sort of an audit in of itself as well. And I help my clients work and help them see what's already true, their voice, their message, their presence. And if you're a founder and your brand doesn't feel aligned with who you really are, then I think you should give me a holler and let's do a brand discovery session. And again, it's not a marketing audit. It's a guided conversation to help you see the gaps, like Brandon talked about, the gaps between how you're showing up, the message that you are sharing or believe in, and the perception of your audience on who you truly are and the gift you bring to the universe. Clarity creates momentum, my friends. And once you have it, everything else begins to flow. So if you're ready to realign your brand with your truth, the link to the brand discovery process to connect with me is in the show notes, and let's get into it. Thank you today. Thank you for joining me today on the Branding Laboratory. where we don't just talk about business. We uncover what really drives the person behind the business. I'm Devo. I'm the host. Until next time, stay bold, stay true, my friends, and show up like you mean it. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.